All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Anthony Conjemi with Crescent City Retirement Group. We're going to be talking tonight about estate planning. Before we get into it, I'd like to just say a little bit about our firm. Crescent City Retirement Group is a registered investment advisory firm. We're located here in Metairie, Louisiana. We have other offices. We have an office in Baton Rouge, one in South Louisiana and Houma. We have an office on the North Shore, and we have an office in Mandeville. Our firm specializes in retirement planning. So the 5 Keys to a Stress-Free Retirement is the name of our workshop that we perform. We think that it's these 5 key elements to a retirement plan is critical. And so we're going to be talking a bit about that. And specifically tonight, we're going to be talking about estate planning. So thanks again for joining us, and we're going to get right into it. We published a book, Retiring Well. It's published on Amazon. I'd like to send you a copy of it for joining us here tonight. The name of the book is Retiring Well, and it specifically goes through all of the 5 keys that we think are critical in any retirement plan. We also do a radio show. The name of the show is Retirement Keys. It's on WRNO at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. We typically have some great guests on the show. My co-host is Tony Shore, and we do that show every Sunday. It's a labor of love. We love doing it, and we have a lot of fun doing it, and it's very timely information. You probably know that in retirement planning or any type of investment planning, there's always changes coming down the pike, and we want to make sure that our audience stays current with those changes. We were also featured in Forbes magazine on our retirement planning work that we do. So at the end of the webinar, Katie's going to be sending out the book that we put out and also the Forbes articles that we put out. So we want to get that to you. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to get right into the webinar. All right, so the 5 keys to a stress-free retirement. So what are these elements? You know, in South Louisiana, we have this term, we want to get all of our ducks in a row. And that's important. We all, as it relates to retirement planning or investment planning, we all presumably want all of our ducks in a row. But the question is, what are they? In other words, what are all the pieces that should be part of a sound retirement plan? And so I have here listed the 5 key elements that we think are critical in any retirement plan. And the first one is estate and legacy planning or enhanced planning. The second is investments or an investment strategy. The third is income planning, structuring income in retirement. And might I add tax efficient income, which is critical. Health care planning, and then of course tax planning. Taxes really infiltrate all aspects of a retirement plan. But these are really the 5 key elements that we address in our retirement plans. And so tonight specifically, we're going to be talking about estate planning and what some of those tools are that you have at your disposal. All right, so estate and legacy planning. So I'm not an attorney, but we work with attorneys, local attorneys, and we specifically want to make sure that the beneficiary forms and the will and the other forms that are utilized for estate planning are all very, they're complementary to each other, and they're not contradictory to each other. Estate and legacy planning is really just protecting the harmony of your family and ensuring that the assets that you've worked so hard for all of your life, your estate, gets transferred properly to the people, your heirs, your family members, that you want those assets to go to in the most efficient manner. So estate and legacy planning is really a big part of any overall retirement plan. So we developed some questions that are on our website that we would really love for you to get a hold of. These are 20 top questions that we believe should be asked to any retirement planning firm or anybody that you might be working with as it relates to retirement. So for our webinar this evening, I pulled out the 4 questions in the questionnaire that we put together for you as it relates to the estate planning part of this. And so I'm going to just read them to you, and then we're going to get right into the tools that are available. The first question is, what estate planning documents should I have to avoid legacy planning mistakes? So very simply, what should I have? What estate planning documents should I have in place? The second one is, how do I leverage what I have for wealth transfer? So for people that are concerned about transferring assets to the next generation, how do they leverage that? Some people are very concerned about how assets are going to transition to their heirs. And so if that's you, there are certain assets that are more efficient, tax efficient, to pass on than others. So that we feel is a good question. All right, so the third question, what are the most tax efficient assets to pass on to my heirs? So as a matter of fact, we just did a little radio show on this, but there are different investments and titling, whether it be certain types of accounts that are more tax efficient to go to kids and grandkids than other types of investments, right? So as an example, IRAs, 401ks, pre-tax dollars are all taxed at ordinary income when they're passed on to a non-spouse beneficiary. With the Secure Act, these assets have to pass on over a 10-year period. They have to be depleted. So there's tax implications. There's other types of assets that aren't taxed that way, right? Non-qualified assets or after-tax dollars get the benefit of a step-up in the cost basis. So the question is, what are the most tax-efficient assets to pass on to my heirs? I think it's a good estate planning question. And the fourth question is, how do I handle a spendthrift, special needs, or minor beneficiary? So these are just some questions that we hear and that we think are very good questions as it relates to estate and legacy planning. These questions are available to you, as well as the other 16 questions on this document, the top 20 questions we think we should all be asking as it relates to retirement planning, which we want to send to you after the call. All right, so what are the tools that we have at our disposal to create a really efficient estate plan? And I have them here listed: wills, living wills, power of attorneys, beneficiary designations, and trusts. So a will. In Louisiana, we transfer assets, and we call that putting an estate through succession. In most states, they call it probate. But nevertheless, it's basically the same process. We're taking assets out of one person's name and transferring to another person's name. So your will is really your instructions on how you want your assets to go. If you have a car titled in your name, or a boat, or a bank account, or a piece of property, all of these assets have to go through succession to transfer those assets out of your name into the next person's name, whether it be a spouse, kids, grandkids, charity, whoever you're leaving it to. So your will is really just instructions on how those assets are to be transferred and to whom they're to be transferred. So a will is a very important estate planning document. Additionally, there may be certain heirlooms and different personal items that you want certain members of your family to receive. The will is a great place to record that. So having a properly drafted will by a Louisiana lawyer is really a great first step to a sound estate plan. Next item on the list is a power of attorney, or a durable power of attorney. So a durable power of attorney should address medical and financial situations. Whoever the person is in your life that would be with you if you were unable to act in your stead, maybe we're involved in an accident, or maybe there's some health issue, and we need that person in our lives, whether it be a spouse or a friend or a sibling or a child, whoever that person is that would be there for you and make decisions for you, whether it be medical or financial decisions. If they don't have your power of attorney, they really are handicapped. We really tied their hands. So it's real important. It's an estate planning document. The attorney, the local attorneys that we use, we always recommend that they put a power of attorney, this durable power of attorney, into the estate planning package. It's a very important document. And as I say, you don't need it until you need it, right? But when you need it and the person is there trying to make good decisions for you, if they don't have your power of attorney, their hands are tied. All right, the next item is a living will. Some of you may have remembered years ago there was a lady in the news. I believe her name was Mary Shivo. She was in Florida, and it made national news. This lady was on a life support system, some type of life support ventilator or a heart-lung machine. I'm not quite sure what it was, but the machines were the only thing keeping her alive. And there was apparently some dispute within the family as to what to do with this lady, and a lot of emotions, obviously. Well, anyway, she didn't have a living will. So your living will is really you saying what you want in the event you're in that situation. So it's not necessarily would be up to the family and any dispute within the family. It would simply be you saying, and it can be very stringent. I mean, if all of your two attending physicians and all agree that the only thing that's keeping you alive is this ventilator or this life support system, then you're making the decision in your living will to say that that it's okay, that you can let me go. I like the word transition because I believe that really defines better what happens and takes place, but we are transitioning or passing on or transitioning to our next rest in place there. And however, without a living will, it really is the family has to make that decision. And so we think it's a very important document to have the living will in place. All right, so trusts. So does everybody need a trust? I would say, in my opinion, the answer is no. Everybody doesn't need a trust. However, there are situations where a trust is needed. And so I want to point out a couple of those situations where we see trusts being utilized. Number one, minors. If you have a minor beneficiary, grandkids, you want to set something up for them, and you want to dictate how they get the funds, when they get the funds, you would need a trust for that. Special needs. Maybe you have a special needs child or grandchild, or one of your beneficiaries has special needs health issues, and you want to leave money to them. You would need a trust for that. In most cases, a special needs, I had a client who had a daughter who had Down syndrome. She wasn't able to handle finances, so we had our lawyer set up a special needs trust, and we pointed an account to fund the trust. When our client passes away, the trust would be funded. A special needs trust dictates how the funds are to be utilized for the recipient of the trust, and it has instructions on how you want things to go. Another example of a trust that we see a lot of in our practice is what they call a spendthrift trust. So we might have grandkids or kids that we want to leave money to, but we want to more or less control how they receive the money. That you might not want them to have it all at one time. So you feel like you'd like to have some structure in how they get their payments, whether it be monthly, quarterly, annually. Well, if that's the case, then you would need a trust for that. So there's always these ideas about why somebody might want to leave assets and how they're going to leave the assets. And if you need to structure payments, or if it's a special needs child or minors, then a trust can be utilized. Does everybody need a trust? We would say, in our opinion, no, they don't. But there are situations where a trust is absolutely helpful. So in that spendthrift trust, there may be a situation where you have, let's say, a daughter who's real good with money, but then you say your son is not so good. Or vice versa. Could be the son real good with money, the daughter not so good. So you want to structure how the son in this example is going to receive the funds. And so a trust, a spendthrift trust, would be important in that regard. So again, not everybody needs a trust, but if there's certain situations where a trust is warranted, then our attorney certainly can do that. And they're not very expensive to do. So this isn't a high ticket item, but it certainly goes a long way in making sure that your estate is set up properly in terms of the way you want things to go. All right, so beneficiary designations. So remember, as it relates to estate planning, it's really just about how things are going to transition out of your name, your estate, into the recipient's name, correct? So with beneficiaries, this is a really efficient way to transfer assets. So as an example, some accounts with beneficiaries: life insurance, annuities, your retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. These are all examples of accounts that have beneficiary designations. Now, what's nice about those designations is these assets go directly to those named beneficiaries, and it avoids the succession process. So it doesn't go through the will and through succession. It transfers how? Through the beneficiary designation, which again is a very efficient way to transfer assets. There are, again, some caveats to this and a couple of things to look out for. I'll give you just one quick example. I have 4 sons, so I'm married. I have a wife and 4 sons. So in my situation, my wife and I are each other's primary beneficiary on our accounts with beneficiaries, and the 4 boys are contingent, 25% each. My oldest son and I, we love to fish, so we're going to assume he's a little older, and he's now married with kids, so my grandkids. So God forbid this never happens, but let's assume we're out, on a fishing trip, and we're both killed in a boating accident. So the question is, it's an estate planning question, would I want Anthony, my oldest son's name is Anthony as well, would I want Anthony's kids to receive their daddy's share? So again, they're all 25% each. Anthony's married with kids. He predeceases me, or we're killed together in a boating accident in this example. So the question is, his 25%, do I want that 25% of the life insurance policy or annuity or IRA or whatever it is, do I want his share to go to his kids? So that's an estate planning question. If you asked me that question, I would say, yes, I do want that. Well, if it's not set up properly on the beneficiary form, I've just presumably disinherited those grandkids, and the remaining 3 boys would now get a third, a third, and a third. So even though these beneficiary forms are real strong and they're very efficient, if they're not set up properly, or if situations change, they can really, assets can go to the wrong place just by default. So what I would encourage you with the will, the trust, if needed, the beneficiary designation, these are the tools that transfer assets. And we just want to make sure that your will is current. We have an attorney that does that for us. We want to make sure there is a trust in place if needed, and that the beneficiary forms are all set up properly so we have a real sound estate plan. Now you may be saying, well, we're talking about a stress-free retirement and enjoying our retirement, and this is estate planning and how things pass on when we transition to the next life. And what I would say is, even though this is end-of-life planning, if you will, it is something that is very important, and we do recognize that when people have their estate planning in order and they're real comfortable with how things are going to go if and when they pass on, it is a very strong sense of relief that you're not going to leave a mess behind. You're not going to leave disharmony within your family. And unfortunately over many years, I've had clients pass away, and even in my own family, I've had family members pass away, and they didn't have, really a well thought out estate plan, and it ends up a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of things that could have very easily been avoided. This is not expensive to have an estate plan put together. Very inexpensive for the tools that you have available to really make sure that everything transitions in the appropriate way. All right, so I mentioned the estate planning checklist. So we're very methodical in our firm. We're not really leaving anything to chance. We have an estate planning checklist, and how we facilitate that is we have a 15-minute phone call with you. We're going to send you the estate planning checklist, and we're going to check off and ask the questions and make sure that nothing is missed. We want to make sure that you have the estate planning documents that you should have or that you need to facilitate your estate plan. It's really just making sure that no stone is left unturned. So we're going to send you the estate planning checklist. We're going to schedule a 15-minute phone call. And between that, we're going to be able to go through the checklist and determine exactly what documents you need to put in place. We really appreciate you joining us this evening. We hope that you got some benefit from our webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we believe there's 5 key elements to any sound plan. Next month's topic is on tax planning, and that's going to be a good one. We have a webinar scheduled for that. Additionally, we do have a workshop we're going to be performing online, the full 5 keys retirement planning workshop. So be on the lookout for a link to be able to sign up for the 5 keys webinar that we have coming for the month of March, as well as the tax webinar that's really just specific on tax planning as it relates to retirement. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you got some benefit from this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.